Shalom. My name is Chris Shoemaker. That's my English name. And my Hebrew name is Rabbi Yehuda ben Shomer. And my Igbo name, coming from the Hebrew, is Tochokwu, because Tochokwu and Yehuda mean the exact same thing, praise God. And my title in IGBOLAND is Odum Biara Aniigbo Noani Diuto. And I greet you, all people in IGBOLAND, all people watching, Ohoneze Canada, who has asked me to produce this short video giving a synopsis regarding the origins of the Igbo people. So I have a very brief and limited amount of time to do this, so let's get underway. So if we're going to talk about the origins of the Igbo people, we've got to go back to the beginning, all the way back to Noah. It's to be understood scientifically that from Adam all the way till Noah, everybody at that point was born black. How do we know this? Because scientifically it could be no other way. Melanin, which is our skin tone, you have to have an abundance of melanin. You have to have all the melanin there before you can genetically end up having a lack of it. It can't be the other way around. You can't have no melanin and all of a sudden out of nowhere produce melanin. So everybody up to that point was born black. But not according to the canonical scriptures, but according to Apocrypha, pseudepigraphal literature, and rabbinic literature, it's believed that Noah was born an albino. He was born without any skin tone. This really frightened his father and his relatives because nobody up to this point was born that way. But God and other relatives reassured Noah's father that it was okay, that not to worry about that, that he was a special child. So when Noah got married, he married a black woman. He married because everybody else was black. And when he had his 3 sons, it's believed that this genetic albino trait triggered the different skin tones, the different shades of melanin within the human spectrum that we see today. And he had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham, who is believed to be the father of all of the black and African races, he was born like everybody else up to that point. He was born black. You had Shem, who's the father of all the Arab and Jewish people, and he was born brown. And today, Jewish and Arab people can be anything from a deep olive complexion all the way to a red mahogany type color. And I think it's very fascinating and interesting that many Igbos are called red Igbos because their skin tone is red. It has a mahogany color to it. Then you had Japheth, who was born sort of like Noah. He had the least amount of melanin and skin tone, and he was the father of all the white and Asian races that we know today. So from Shem came Jacob, which is the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, Jacob had 2 wives and 2 concubines. His wives, Rachel and Leah, were his cousins. Therefore, they were from Shem. Therefore, they had that middle of the road skin tone. They were that olive brown complexion. Now, we don't know the ethnicity or the race of Zilpah and Bilhah, the handmaids that Jacob also took as wives, but because Laban and his daughters Rachel and Leah and the concubine were living in the land of Canaan, and because Zilpah and Bilhah had this bond-servant type status, this concubine status, we believe that they were probably from Canaan. And all of the Canaanite nations, the 7 Canaanite nations whom Israel came to subdue and take over the land, which is the land of promise, they were from Canaan, and Canaan was from Ham, therefore they were all black. This includes the original Egyptians. They were black. It wasn't until the Hyksos came in later that the genetic makeup and features of the Egyptian people changed, and they're a lighter skin tone as we know them today. So, safely assuming that Bilhah and Zilpah, and we're mostly focusing on Zilpah, because Zilpah was the mother of Gad and Asher, she was a black Canaanite woman, and therefore her offspring, Gad and Asher, had some of her genetic features. Therefore, they would have been more black. Their lips probably would have been broader, as well as their noses. Their hair would have been more wiry, more kinky. They would have looked more like Canaanites, more than Shemites, so to speak. and several of the other tribes. We had Judah and Levi. They also married Canaanite women, and so therefore a lot of people from the tribe of Judah and Levi are also black. We know that the Limba tribe in Africa has been traced genetically back to the tribe of Levi. We know that there are a lot of black Jews as well because the genetics show up even though they're a dark skin tone. So we know that Judah married a Canaanite woman and had some of his sons were black as well. So moving on, Gad in turn had 7 sons, and we're interested in 4 out of the 7, which is Eri, Areli, and Arodi, and possibly Esbon, because Esbon is a common name among the Ibu people. So it is believed that the Ibu people spring from Gad's sons, Eri, Areli, Arodi, and possibly Esbon. And we know that one of the kingdoms, the king in Obu Gad, house of Gad, and Aguleri, his last name is Eri. He can trace his lineage directly from Gad's son Eri, and that's why Eri is still a part of his last name. So it's believed that the Ibu people, and Ibu is also believed to be a corruption of the word Hebrew. Hebrew, Ibu. See how similar they sound? And the second law of thermodynamics, which means everything degrades, would lend to this vocabulary instance. Just as, for instance, in English, we'll say, hey, what is up? What is up comes to what's up. What's up eventually becomes what's up. You see how it shortens over time? So it's the same with the word Hebrew. That's what the 10 tribes were considered. They were considered Hebrews. So Gad would have been considered a Hebrew. So the word Hebrew goes to the word Ibu. It's a corruption. Even one of the first missionaries to IGBOLAND, which was G.T. Gadsden, an Anglican missionary, he also believed that the word Ibu was a corruption of the word Hebrew. So moving on, we believe that according to Genesis chapter 15, which was a prophecy given to Abraham during the covenant between the parts, God said to Abraham that there was going to come a point in time where the children of Israel were going to be enslaved and were going to be in bondage. This prophecy was passed down to all of the children throughout the generations. And so when Joseph came along and began to rule, was second in command of Egypt, and he brought his brothers down, and therefore the 12 tribes sprang from there, we know that eventually that these 12 tribes became enslaved by the Egyptians. But some theorize and believe that some of the Israelites at that time, especially Gad's sons Eri, Areli, and Arodi, saw the situation in Egypt decline. They were starting to lose favor among the Egyptians. They were beginning to be more rules and regulations and persecution happening. And they said to themselves, okay, we know that this slavery is about to happen. Since we know prophetically it's going to happen, let's get while the getting's good. So there was a pre-Exodus exodus, so to speak, and it's believed that Eri, Areli, and Arodi, along with other traveling companions, left and made it to what we know today as Nigeria. They crossed the Niger River into Nigeria, settled, and spread out. So that's one theory. There was also another exodus that occurred during the reign of Jeroboam. Some of the 12 tribes didn't like the direction that the Jeroboam kingdom was going into gross idolatry. They knew or had this inkling that they had brothers in Africa, in Nigeria specifically, so some of them left to go there, possibly more Gadites, so that was another wave. There was also the Assyrian captivity. We know that the Israel was split into 2 kingdoms. You had the kingdom of Judah, the southern kingdom, and the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel. Judah was taken off into Babylonian captivity and eventually returned, and that's who we recognize as the Jewish people today, made up of Judah and Levi and a part of Benjamin. The 10 tribes, however, was taken off into Assyrian captivity and never returned. They were lost to antiquity, lost to time, and they were scattered all over the world. And so we believe that during this time that more Gadites and more others from other tribes, Judah, Levi, Benjamin, Zebulun, made it to Nigeria to be with their brothers and sisters whom they knew were already there. You also had the destruction of the temple during 70 AD, which precipitated another wave of Jews and Israelites scattering abroad, some going to Nigeria. In James, the book of James 1:1, it says, to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. So up until that point, the Jews knew where their 10 brothers were scattered, because the letter was to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. So they knew that many of their brothers had made it to what we call today Nigeria. And so the letter was for them as well. So you also had the revolt at Masada. According to history, you have been taught that everybody committed suicide. All the Jews and the Israelites that were there, held up in the fortress of Masada, committed suicide. But Josephus says that some escaped, and some sailed off into the direction of what we know as the Americas, and some were believed to make it to Nigeria. You also have the modern diaspora, where people are waking up to their genetic ancestral identity, and a lot of people recognizing they're coming from the lost 10 tribes, and specifically the Igbo, are making their way back to Igbo land. So these are some of the ways and some of the reasons how the Igbo people made it to Nigeria. Now, I've never seen this personally with my own eyes, because the time I went to the Ofala festival, the river was high. But I've heard that during the dry season, during the Ofala festival, or the whole reason for the Ofala festival is to commemorate Eri, Areli, and Erodi and their traveling companions crossing the Niger River and settling in Nigeria. I've been told that during the dry season, when the water's low, you can see a 12-stone altar, monument, if you will, commemorating the crossing of Eri, Areli, and Erodi into Nigeria. This stands to biblical reason, because when the tribes crossed the Jordan River, they did the exact same thing. Why? Because they wanted to remember their origins. They wanted to remember who they are, where they came from, so they wouldn't lose their identity or lose who they were. Hopefully this has helped you to understand and open up the origins of the Igbo people. If you're interested in more information, I have 2 specific books. The very first book that I've written is Finding Gad, The Quest for the Lost Tribe of Gad, and this is a little over 100 pages, and it's a brief synopsis of the historical, linguistic, cultural, scientific, archaeological identity of the Igbo people, and how that there's these evidences that link the Igbo people to the lost tribe of Gad. Now, this is the second and most recent book that I've written, called Omanana, As in Israel, So in IGBOLAND, Are Igbos Hebrews? This is a more detailed, in-depth account of the cultural, historical, linguistic, archaeological, scientific evidences that link the Igbo people to the lost tribes of Israel, specifically to Gad. These books can be found and purchased at www.hebrewigbo.com. www.hebrewigbo.com. You can go to this website and research all the evidences and watch the various videos I have regarding the connection of the Igbo people to Gadites and to Israel. And you can also purchase these books that I've just shown you there on the website. Thank you for this opportunity and for this privilege to speak to you about the origins of the Igbo people. Thank you so much for watching. Shalom.